Welcome back folks to a new Stalker 2 video. So today I wanted to sort of recap everything which has been happening with this title throughout the year, because believe it or not, we're actually nearing the first year anniversary of Stalker 2 release, because well, November 20th is near, and because well, this game released in 2024, it's been a while, and honestly I don't know how fast time actually went by since the release, because I've been covering this game since the release in terms of the updates and patches, and I can sort of give you the picture of my experience throughout all of these patches, because when Stalker 2 released, even though I honestly did enjoy the game, because Stalker franchise for me, and I think a lot of people from this region of Europe, is a game that they grew up with, you know, it's still a game that we thoroughly enjoy playing. But let's face it, when this game came out, it had a lot of issues in both of optimization, then some of the features which were lacking, the A-Life system was pretty much not working at all, and various other problems with the main and side missions, because some of them were simply soft locking you, were not able to progress the game, and so on. And if you look at all of these like patches and updates which were happening throughout the year, you can see a lot of those fixes was actually aimed, well, first off towards optimizing like the game itself, how it runs, and also fixing all of the problems with those side and main activities, or well, missions, story missions specifically. Now overall, after all of these patches, because currently we are in the update 1.6 version of the game called Night of the Hunter, where they started introducing more elements into the game, from night vision and so on. And even prior to this update, there has been a lot of things and features that community was asking for, which they have delivered. One of those smaller things being like, for example, how the player reloads, because prior, you know, on the game release, one of the issues is that once you reload, it's not going to remember where, like for example, if you dropped your magazine on the ground, the animation would simply restart from the beginning. It wasn't really immersive. They also fixed that. So on the front of like just people asking for these small feature updates, they have been delivering. Specifically in 1.6, they, as I said, introduced night vision, which was one of the most requested features throughout this game, because let's face it, previous Stalker games had it. Now, besides that, when it comes to the overall optimization itself, throughout all of these patches, they have been working on tweaking like CPU and GPU optimization. That means that, for example, areas that are locations of different factions, or anywhere where you have a lot of NPCs, it was causing the game to pretty much stutter, because, well, every single time you approach a certain location, it's going to be filled by NPCs, which are meta-humans, or well, the Unreal Engine 5, you know, feature of it. And the problem with the meta-human is that if it's not properly optimized, especially with the quality it offers for NPC models, it also takes a lot of the actual like performance, because well, it has to render all of that, it has to stream all of that throughout the engine, which also makes things a little bit problematic. Throughout all of these patches, I saw that my overall like just frame rate was becoming a little bit more stable throughout the zone itself, depending on where I am right now. Again, some of the zones, especially later on in the game, like Pripyat and so on, were a little bit problematic, and I still think they are, because well, you have a lot of objects in that area, so that means like the overall frame rate is going to drop a lot. But things are slowly and surely becoming a little bit better on that optimization front. Now again, do keep in mind that it's not going to magically increase your frame rate every time there is a new update. I think one of the main things I noticed here was not necessarily that my frame rate was going up with their optimization, but rather that my frame rate was staying a little bit more, how would I say, balanced through all of that, and I was not experiencing all of those spikes, or well, drops in frame rate whenever I was going throughout the zone itself. So when it comes to the optimization, it's getting better, but I still think there has to be a lot of changes done to the game to make it better. One of those changes was announced in their tier list, or well, update list for 2025, where they said they're gonna be updating the engine of the game to Unreal Engine 5.5.4. if you don't know, Unreal Engine has been releasing updates for it, for their own engine, which means that they have been working on balancing some of the features which they have offered to basically give you better frame rate, especially when it comes to lumen, when it comes to various other light sources which were drawing a lot of like resources. And the problem with Unreal Engine 5 is that it's a good engine, keep in mind, but it requires a lot of optimization for it to work properly. And when you use up all of these features, yeah, it can look good, of course, but it takes a huge chunk of your resources overall. So the Unreal Engine version 5.5.4 should be addressing all of that, because they said it's for optimization. Keep in mind that we still don't have the update for the game where they have the Unreal Engine update itself, so the game is still currently running on the Unreal Engine version since the game was released. So when it comes to that optimization, we still have to wait for that to come out to see like how much is it actually going to help the game. Now I do think it's going to be better, because I mean, it's updating a whole engine of the game is not easy, and I think they probably figured out that doing it would kinda help out a lot, so that's why they're doing it in the first place. Of course, keep in mind when I talk about all of this optimization, I'm specifically talking about the PC version of the game, because I have not been playing the game on the Xbox version itself. And especially now, because on the November 20th, we're actually getting the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro version of Stalker 2. So as I said, I know some people were kind of skeptical if we're ever gonna be getting the Stalker on PlayStation. Yes, of course, that was always happening, because the exclusive with Xbox was just the time-gated one, so it wasn't something that would continue forever. It's just something that they probably struck a deal with them for like 6 to 8 months, and in the meantime they could have still developed the PlayStation 5 version for it to release, because ultimately it brings, new people into the game, and for the company, it brings more sales. And I honestly think that's amazing for as long as, and I do hope this, that the PlayStation 5 version is gonna be running well. We shall see once this is released on November 20th. Now when it comes to the A-Life system in Stalker, keep in mind, if you were not playing Stalker before, the A-Life system in previous Stalker games was phenomenal, because it made the zone feel alive, because the zone was going about its business regardless if you were near certain location or not. That means that NPCs, mutants, everything on the map is gonna be following this logical way of moving throughout the zone. People are gonna be doing that, their own stuff. Other stalkers are gonna be exploring. The mutants are gonna be migrating from one place to another, which ultimately meant that as you were exploring the game and playing it, every single time you might run into something different, or different stalkers, or maybe you don't run into anyone, again depending on what the zone was doing while you were playing the game somewhere else, or you were not present at that location. And it made the zone feel interesting, it made the zone feel alive, and it made the zone feel deadlier, because you couldn't simply rely on knowing the locations of enemies, because you never know if those locations, or well, who inhabits those locations, will change. Now for Stalker 2, keep in mind that A-Life was pretty much gutted and basically disabled when the game released, because they were simply not ready to release it in that system. So what they relied on is simply spawning people in those locations that you would usually have them spawn. That meant that as you were exploring the zone, you could actually see people spawn in front of you, you could see mutants spawn in front of you, and it really wasn't an immersive experience, because it's like, okay, so wherever I go, it's just going to spawn enemies like any other game, and it's not really representative of what Stalker actually is and what Stalker was representing in those previous games when it comes specifically to that system. Now throughout all of these patches, they kept adding more things, or well, fixing the A-Life system to work better. That means that right now, technically, as they said here, and something I noticed in my patches, is that yes, you're going to have stalkers explore the zone, you're going to have mutants move around the zone, and yes, you are going to get more of those random encounters, because, well, those stalkers, regardless of what faction is, are gonna be going throughout it, you're gonna be meeting them, so it feels everything more alive. But even to this point, keep in mind that the A-Life 2 system, as you know they call it, is still not fully ready. That means that in majority of cases I noticed that things or how A-Life was working was sort of 50-50. Sometimes it does the job good, you actually see like different monsters in places where they were not there, so that means technically it works. But in a lot of the cases I noticed that sort of the spawns or the way that things were happening were pretty much the same. And I don't know if this is only on my save, but every single time I hear mutants in the background and I'm getting near them, for some reason it also starts spawning other stalkers next to them. So every single time on the open field, when I'm going to have an encounter with either a mutant or a stalker, they usually spawn at the same time and I just see stalkers destroying those mutants and that's it. And that would be okay, that makes sense, if it wasn't happening almost in 90% of cases, at least in my playthrough and what I experienced personally. And I also noticed that some people were showing it on the official subreddit that they still have situations where they're going to actually see NPCs spawn in front of them and it's still happening. So this pretty much tells us that still, you know, A-Life system is not working properly and it still has issues which, well, they're aiming to solve with each one of these updates. Now, I'm obviously going to say that yes, you know, GSE has been working hard with these updates. Like every single time something new happens, something that community is requesting. Another example would be the night vision, of course. Now, some people, of course, are requesting the binoculars as well, which were the part of every single like Stalker game. And I think one of the issues with binoculars, and that's the same issue with scopes in this game, is that, well, it probably has to do something with loading. If you notice, every single scope in this game, doesn't matter which one it is, especially the one which has a bigger like magnification, it's not going to actually give you like a really like close-up image because, well, it cannot load things in the background. And you actually see it in this specific clip. Like if I take a look very carefully with this scope, which is not even fully scoped, you can see that the LOD is pretty much, you know, level of detail is staying the same, and it's not updating it, which would probably maybe cut your performance, something like that. And I think that's one of the main reasons why you cannot zoom in this game, and I think that's why we don't have binoculars yet. So I think once those things are fixed within the engine, that's when we can expect binoculars. That's when we can expect better scopes and so on, because you cannot really have it this way. It's not going to work. Especially considering that Stalker 2 is the first game out of the X-Ray engine. So Stalker 2 is Unreal Engine 5. Previous Stalker games were done in X-Ray engine, which was in-house GSE engine. Keep in mind, as any in-house engine, it has its pluses because, you know, people were able to like fully dissect it and make anomaly, make all of those like mod packs and everything, which was very much popular, you know, prior to the game coming out, and it's popular even today. Now, problem is, when you switch out those engines, yes, Unreal Engine 5 can look better, it can be better, but it comes with its own problems, which if they're not addressed, you're just going to end up with the same issues or even worse issues which you were not having previously. So I just hope that the engine update, as I said, to the Unreal Engine 554 is going to fix majority of those issues. Is that going to happen? Well, we have to wait and find out. And of course, when it comes to other features that people were requesting, like for me personally, one of the things which I would love to be fixed and basically like return to how it was with previous games, is being able to choose how long I want my character to sleep. In previous games, you were able to sleep for 1-2 hours to up to like, what, 24 hours, so you were able to pretty much choose when you wake up and when you start exploring the zone. Right now, that's really not the case. You just sort of go to sleep, Skiff is going to sleep for like, what, 6, 7, 8 hours, and then wake up, and then you have to like, especially like if you were waking up during the night before without night vision, I was just going back to sleep until like the morning to kind of properly line it up so I can actually play the game and go out mission exploring, because, well, without the night vision during the night it was very difficult, because even right now the flashlight is not the greatest when it comes to actually like showing anything in front of you. And I think that also could be the issue related to Unreal Engine and probably something to do with the overall, like just the how the game works and optimization itself. And I think majority of these updates yet have been done in the foundational level of the game, because if you want to add anything on top of it, I think that was a very much similar issue with, for example, like Cyberpunk 2077, where they first had to really sort out the foundation of the game so that within the code everything works before they were actually releasing like Phantom Liberty expansion. Because imagine if Phantom Liberty came out and you didn't have all of those updates, because it took for CDPR up to like Cyberpunk 2.0 version for it to be really properly like done in terms of like optimization and bug fixing and glitches, for them to add on top of it a whole new expansion. Now, because Stalker 2 promised that they're gonna be, you know, doing DLCs for the game, expansions, then that's a whole point, because sort of like if you bought the most expensive versions of the game, you get that season pass in a sense, which gives you access to all of those future DLCs, expansions, however you want to call it. But you cannot add them right now because the foundation is still pretty much being fixed. And I think personally that it's going to take up to, again, Stalker 2.0 until that's, you know, the game finally takes shape into what developers initially wanted. Now, I don't want this video just to be me criticizing everything, because, you know, they have been really working on it. Like, again, there has been a lot of things which were fixed, like you could see that, obviously, with each update things were sort of improving, but I think it still isn't a huge improvement, especially when you combine it with A Live, until everybody starts noticing that difference. I think that's some of the comments I've seen online, like people are still saying like, I really don't see the difference yet, like everything is sort of like still the same. Like, yes, they added all of those new features, but there are still issues like with the core game, how it functions, how it works, how it plays out. And don't get me wrong, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time in Stalker 2, I still do. I think it's still very immersive, very fun to play, and I still think that, you know, it looks great. But the problem is, like, yes, it's really not up to par with some of the features they had before. And because they have been working so much on this, it sort of like brings me hope that they really want to turn this into something special. Because, again, we have the PlayStation 5 version coming out. I'm still not sure if the engined version on PlayStation 5 is going to be 554. I'm kind of confused about that, if they're actually gonna be releasing that engine upgrade alongside the PlayStation 5 version, or maybe the PlayStation 5 version alongside everything else is going to receive that upgrade later on. Because, well, this is the list for 2025. We have, what, 2 more months in 2025. Things can be delayed, but so far they didn't say anything about any sort of delays considering their roadmap itself. And they have been very active when it comes to the mod integration and sort of like, you know, releasing the Zone Kit, which is the modding toolkit for Stalker 2, and they have been expanding it with each update, so they're gonna be releasing features for it with each phase, which is good because the modding community for Stalker is very vibrant. And to be honest, I think one of the main reasons why the game was so popular, especially in the mainstream when you think about it, was because of all of these mods. It's because of Anomaly, it's because of thousands of other smaller mods and fixes to the game, which ultimately became, for example, Gamma and so on, which I think majority of people were playing prior to the release of this game, especially people who have not maybe played the vanilla version of Stalker games ever, which I do recommend playing, because vanilla is sort of the closest to what developers want. Because keep in mind, again, things like Anomaly, things like Gamma or Complete Edition, whatever, they were sort of changed a lot to make the game more gameplay oriented rather than story oriented. So that's why you got all of those crafting stuff, you get all of those little tidbits that were sort of a part of these mod packs. And of course GSE noticed that, because in Stalker 2 you can definitely notice that they have been drawing like inspiration from it, and they have been sort of shaping the game to be not close to, I would say, to Anomaly, but rather closer to sort of like the gameplay style and what you can do within the game itself, which is not something you were doing in previous Stalker games. So the question is, should you be buying Stalker 2 now? Should you be waiting for 2.0? To be honest, I'm 50-50 on this because I personally enjoy this game and I'm having a nice time following this, journey where they update the game, where new things are added. But I know that some people don't really want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with all of these updates and they just want to wait for the complete experience rather than doing the game, then encountering an issue, then waiting for that issue to be fixed. If you are more in the boat of like waiting, then you can definitely wait until like maybe the engine update, comes out. Or if you were already playing the game on release, maybe the first 2 weeks and you haven't touched it since, you can technically go back and have a better experience because again, a lot of those features were added like monster hunting and skinning, because before when you hunt a monster, a mutant, you pretty much lose the money on your ammo, maybe on your health, and you gain nothing from it. So now they have added obviously the option from the previous Stalker game where you can skin those animals, get the trophy, sell them and get some, money back. So these things are definitely there, and at least when it comes to like just the story missions, side missions, at least from my personal testing, all of those soft locks and all of those problems which people were encountering with like closed doors, being stuck there, have been fixed now, at least in the majority of use cases. Now, of course, can it still happen? Probably yes. So I think that GSC has been improving the game, things have been improving, but if you really want to wait for the complete experience again, for you to just experience the game how it is, then I recommend doing what people were doing for Cyberpunk 2077. Wait for 2.0 or well the most complete version and then play that, because that's where you're going to have like what developers intended with all of the changes, feature updates and so on, so you can have that full experience. So that's it for today. Tell me down below in the comments, what do you think about all of this? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think about the game so far? Have you played it? Are you waiting for the game to receive more updates? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more. Also check us out on Twitter and Discord, and huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out, and I will see you guys very soon in a new video. Now, as always, get out of here, Stalker.